You can live for a long time with the confidence that your life is flowing smoothly and calmly. The only problem in your life might be a slow iPhone. Indeed, a beautiful wife, 2 nice children, and only bright prospects for a happy old age ahead. But everything can change overnight. Suddenly you find yourself on the sidelines of life or walking in a completely different direction, surrounded by entirely different people. I was born prematurely, and my parents spent my entire childhood trying to protect me from life's storms. I walked outside with the boys, always under the supervision of one of them or my grandmother. Coming home at odd hours was a tragedy of universal proportions. The boys in the area were always good psychologists. They had a keen sense of human nature and reacted accordingly. They understood my nature. I was bullied by everybody, even the girls. It got to the point where I was afraid to go out. Right outside the doorway, I was met by an aggressive crowd of peers, and the cycle continued. I am HeyElton, and I am a man shaped by life's trials, from childhood bullying to military service, navigating the complexities of love and trust. Educational work began, but it felt futile. I would come home covered in bruises, and my parents couldn't do anything about it. They tried to talk to the kids, but it only made things worse. You can't keep following a teenager around all the time, protecting him from adversity. It seemed that my hopeless childhood would never end, and my days would end under the skirting board. One day my mother's cousin Robbie came to visit us. He was finishing military school and was about to leave for the army. He immediately grasped my situation. It was winter, and hockey battles were going on in our yard. My place was outside the hockey box. Uncle Robbie had been observing my suffering for some time, and one night he came into my room. Human beings are predators. Among predators, there is only one right, the right of the strongest. You will be beaten all your life until you fight back and you shove your fear aside. Nothing will change. A man is all about honor. You don't have it now, but there's a chance to get it back. Don't be afraid of pain, blood, and snot. Gather your will into a fist and fight back with dignity. You may lose, but your honor will not suffer, Robbie said, stroking my head, lighting a cigarette, and then leaving the room. 2 days later, I was accepted into the hockey team. One of the boys fell ill, and I was assigned to replace him. During a game in a tense situation, accusations were thrown at me when a pass was missed. In the end, the unlucky player even punched me in the face. All the accumulated rage hit me at once. Without thinking twice, I struck back with my stick. The guy collapsed on the ice, bleeding from the bridge of his nose. From that moment on, everything changed. No one called me names or harassed me anymore. I was accepted into the pack like everyone else. I went to different sections in my childhood, learning a little music and playing hockey. Uncle Robbie was already in the army when he took me to the martial arts section during one of his visits. You're unlikely to become a great athlete, but you'll learn to protect yourself and your girlfriend, he said. That was the last time I ever saw him. 6 months later, he was killed in one of the hot spots. My first irreplaceable loss. Classes in a section taught me self-control. I'm not just talking about the skills I learned. Strangely, I was making progress. I even competed in national competitions, but that wasn't my goal. I went to a technical university and 5 years later became a mechanical engineer. However, I never went into production. I was attracted to Army service. Robbie's stories did their job and changed my life. In my 3rd year at university, I met Emily, an ordinary girl from an ordinary family. A natural blonde with brown eyes, she was friends with my classmate by then and was going to marry him. There was not a spark between us, but lightning. She broke off the engagement with her boyfriend, despite the entreaties of her family and friends. 6 months later, we were married. A year later, twins were born, a boy and a girl, Robbie and Masha. I adapted quickly to the army. I went to a lot of hotspots, even to Africa. I served as an instructor in an African country, training their soldiers in artillery. That's how I spent 6 months. One day, on my way back from training, I broke the main rule, not to drink water from local springs. As a result, I got hepatitis and was sent back to my home country for treatment. I was hospitalized for about a month. Hepatitis is a sticky thing. My liver was the first thing that got hurt. When I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor said I was lucky, but there could be problems in the future. He didn't specify. A year later, I was wounded rather seriously. Further service was out of the question. I retired from the reserve with the rank of captain and started adapting to civilian life. My wife was always there for me, Except for Africa, of course. She never left me for a single day and didn't go away like some wives to their mothers to take a break from their husbands. I always knew a loving woman was waiting for me at home, ready to watch my back. As a civilian, I looked around for a while and then opened a shop for repairing musical instruments and toys. It might not seem like much, but let me tell you, I had a waiting list. There are always many music lovers who want to fix their favorite instrument. New ones cost a lot of money, and repairs are relatively cheap. After 2 years, the shop turned into a company. In addition to repairs, we began making exclusive guitars and luxury toys. Emily worked as a doctor at the regional diagnostic center and also earned a lot of money. We had a large apartment in the city center inherited from my grandfather, as well as a spacious country house which we built ourselves. The children went to school, and everything was fine. Emily was one of those rare types of women who didn't age. On the contrary, she became even more beautiful by adulthood. Not a single wrinkle on her face, her curly hair, beautiful chest, and finally, legs from the ears. And all this was my wife. On the other hand, I began to have a little problem. My body started to gain fat, a consequence of hepatitis. Gradually, my figure got heavier, and I lost the abs on my belly. That would have been all right, but I noticed that my wife became self-conscious about me. The love was still there, but we were less in public together. We truly loved each other and were always together, both at work and on vacation. Recently, there was a fashion for corporate parties. Only the lazy didn't talk about what was going on there. Sometimes my wife used to go to these events with me alone. I had no reason to forbid her fun, but at some point, I began to notice strange looks from her colleagues. I didn't pay much attention to this, but subconsciously I became tense. Something was going on behind my back, but I couldn't yet understand. Grigor Reef, a well-known businessman in our city, had been visiting my wife's office for some time. In our time, he held a firm position in the construction business, and then he got sick. Emily was a cardiologist and successfully conducted a course of treatment, but the businessman was passionate about his health and daily sought to get to her appointments with bunches of flowers. One day, I decided to meet Emily after work. As I was kissing my wife, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the businessman with flowers. He turned around in time and walked past us, pretending to be going to someone in the center. It didn't escape my notice that Emily blushed deeply and averted her eyes. Do you know how blondes blush? One night at dinner, Emily turned to me. Elton Grigorie, you know him, is throwing a party. He wants to invite you and me. As if incidentally, she said, pouring me a coffee. What does that have to do with us? I snorted and looked at my wife. I knew about her platonic relations with Grigor Reef. I was even going to interfere at some point in their tender friendship. But for the time being, I decided to observe what would happen. I trusted my wife, especially since the businessman wasn't the only man around. Emily was not to be jealous of every man walking around in their pants around her. He wants to thank me for the successful treatment. Lots of famous people will be there with live music. We're invited. The party is this Friday, by the way, Emily said. Emily, I wanted to talk to you about Grigorie. It seems to me that he's trying to glue himself to you. It reminds me of hunting. Even from the outside, you can see he wants to get hold of you. Doesn't it seem like he's playing around? I put on the table a cup with half-finished coffee. Elton, I have nothing with him. Yes, he gives me some attention, but no more than that. Well, maybe you do realize that if something else happens, it would be a disaster for us, Elton. Don't be silly. I just want to go to the party, and I want you to be there too. I'm not going to flirt with anyone. Emily blushed. And somehow I think that Grigor will pursue you in every way. Can you imagine how things will turn out if he does? I watched Emily's reaction carefully. After all, we are adults. We won't be there alone, and there will be security. I can take care of myself. Don't be offended. My wife ran her fingers caressingly over my cheek. In the end, I agreed. Emily talked me into it after all, but I didn't decide to go because I listened to my wife. I wanted to settle the matter with Emily and the businessman once and for all. The party was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock in the evening. Emily was putting on her makeup in front of the mirror. She looked like a model on the runway. Her dark red, almost burgundy dress looked stunning to say the least. It unobtrusively emphasized my wife's almost perfect figure, letting me see the bulges and curves in all the right places. I do not know why it upset me. Some bad feelings did not leave me all these days. I dressed simply, black loose pants, a white shirt, and a velour jacket. I thought for a long time about what to wear on my feet and settled on black leather shoes with pointed toes. Maybe not too fashionable, but functional. Emily hugged me and kissed me on the lips. "Do you think I look good?" I answered glumly. "You look amazing, you know it yourself. I only wondered one thing, for whom are you so dressed up?" "For you, my love, only for you," Emily replied. "Listen, let's not go to hell with this party. We'll have a great time at home." I was grasping at straws to postpone the inevitable disaster. "Honey, we had a deal," Emily pouted. "You look great too, by the way." I looked at my wife and took her in my arms. She took my hands from her shoulders and reproachfully looked at me. "Elton, you'll wrinkle the dress." I realized that in her mind, she had long been at the party. For a moment, I thought I was saying goodbye to my wife. I took her by the arm and walked her to the door. Emily was walking down to the car when, without changing my body position, I flipped the light switch with my left foot right above my head. Emotions vanished into thin air in an instant. I was ready. We arrived almost on time. The gate was open and we drove freely to the parking lot in front of the house. The valet ran up to us, but I didn't trust him with my car. Then he just showed me the empty spaces. I didn't hesitate and took the last one to be able to freely leave the garage if necessary. I did everything automatically. My subconscious mind and my still not quite lost army skills worked for me. I gave the valet money and asked them not to force my car, leaving a free pass. Emily looked at my maneuvers with surprise and concern. "What's all this for? It's like you're getting ready for something bad," she said. "Relax, my love, everything will be fine." But I didn't care what she said. I just shrugged it off. "It's just a little precaution. We'll see how things work out. The most important thing is that this party is not the end of our marriage." The wife sub turned pale. It seemed to me that she knows something ready for something. But what damn? It's getting bad before it starts, but maybe all is not lost yet. We walked to the front door and up the marble steps. Just before the door, Emily turned to me. "Elton, let's have fun today. Neither you nor I want any trouble. Let's relax and enjoy nice company and good music." The door swung open, and the young man asked for our last names. I said our names. He looked at the guest list for a while and then uttered, "Emily Veers and a companion." He looked at me and I saw a sneer in his eyes. "2 people, come on in, gentlemen, have a nice evening." I looked at my wife in surprise. With a companion like a free supplement. Cold rage stirred in my stomach. Emily looked at me strangely and squeezed my palm reassuringly as we passed. I saw, out of the corner of my eye, a contemptuous smirk on the lips of the guard at the entrance to the hall. We were met by Mr. Grigorie himself. Beside him stood a young woman in a very short lettuce dress. Her short cropped black hair beautifully framed her swarthy face. She smelled of expensive perfume. The owner kissed my wife's hand. "You are a miracle worker, I just have no words." Then the businessman turned to me. "You're Elton? I've heard a lot about you. Nice to meet you. For you," he smiled at Emily, "I'm just Boris." He held out his hand for me to shake. I took it. He started to squeeze it. I responded and, kind looking into his eyes, I could see that he was already in pain and was trying his best not to show it. Okay, that was enough for the first time. I unclenched my palm. There was a long pause, then just Boris smiled and said, "Come on in. Friends, make yourselves at home. Meet our other guests." He did not introduce his companion to us. A lot of people had already gathered. A few sportsmen and their wives, a couple of actors from the regional theater, and just a few nice-looking women. There was also someone from the mayor's office. I didn't know the rest, and to be honest, I didn't want to know them. I was worried about something else entirely. Emily kissed me on the cheek and ran to powder her nose. I wandered around trying to stay close to the buffet table. I grabbed a glass of soda and took a slow sip, looking around the room. Drinking this evening wasn't my plan. I saw Emily appear in the hall. Boris just walked up to her and took her by the elbow. Emily turned to him and smiled, then said something to him which made him shake his head uneasily. Grigor looked around, saw his companion, and waved her off. Someone put their hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was the friend of the owner, with a cute smile looking at me. "My name is Ava. Bring me some champagne," she said. She was a beauty, not as beautiful as Emily, but still. I took a flute from the table and gave it to the girl. "You're amazing." Frankly, I was not up to flirting today, so I just blurted out the first thing that came to mind. It was bad timing when she came up to me. Wait, I remembered Boris waving at her. Okay, I get it. This girl seemed to be reserved for me so that I wouldn't get in the way. That night, we had a little talk with the girl. Nothing about just some nonsense. She was staring at me, keeping her gaze fixed on me, clearly letting me know she was willing to do more than just talk, pure lust. I continued to watch my wife over her shoulder. Emily and the host were dancing 2 quick dances, and then they went to the bar. Another unfamiliar couple approached. Emily was having a good time. She had completely forgotten that she had come here with her husband. "I see you can't take your eyes off your wife," Ava grinned. "Don't worry about her. She has a very busy evening ahead of her, and Boris won't let her get bored. Look at me. I am your consolation prize tonight." I wasn't surprised. I just looked at the woman with a cold, serpentine stare. She even shivered. She didn't seem to care about love. I figured it out, probably not tonight. She stepped away from me quickly and was out of sight. I glanced at Emily again. She was dancing enthusiastically with just Boris, a slow dance. The dance floor was almost empty, with only 2 couples on it. A small bandstand was occupied by musicians. An unfamiliar couple was making out. My wife and the businessman were doing it in a less obvious way. He whispered something in her ear, and she tried to get close to him. It was obvious that Emily was sinking more and more into love nirvana. Finally, she let Boris wrap his arms around her 5th place and pull her close. He kissed her openly without hiding. I could see Emily didn't know what she was doing. I knew it was time to intervene. I went out onto the dance floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 intimidating-looking guards move away from the opposite wall. I patted the voluptuary on the shoulder. "A change of suitor," the master answered irritably, not letting my wife out of his embrace. "Piss off, you stooge. Emily is mine today. Uncle, you're not confused. She's my wife, so you get lost." Boris, holding Emily's hand, waved to his bulls. They slowly approached. "You set me up. We're going to leave now. If you stay here, there's no going back." Suddenly, it was easy for me. I no longer had any doubts about what would happen next. My rage had to be unleashed on someone. "Elton, my love, it's only one night after all. You wouldn't leave me because of one night?" Emily was almost crying. "You want to sleep with that man so badly that you're willing to give a damn about me?" I almost screamed. The music stopped, and my words rang out across the room. The owner could see I was furious. He realized it was time to quiet the stubborn stooge who didn't want to give up his wife to be slaughtered by the alpha male. He waved his hand carelessly in the direction of the bodyguards. "Elton, you could have had a great time with Ava, and so could I. I do not understand why you did not agree. You liked her, didn't you?" Emily almost cried. "Of course she did. The jealous husband ruined the whole evening. Get that cuckold out of here now." Grigor was no longer hiding his rage. They came at me, coming in from 2 sides. I waited, keeping my eyes on my wife. The bodyguards grabbed me, trying to wring my hands. Emily covered her mouth with her palm and just stared without moving. Then she hid behind Grigor's back. It seems that she no longer considered me her husband. "I'm leaving. Are you with me?" I spoke slowly. "Get out, you disgust me." That's what I had to prove. I looked once more at the battlefield, and without looking at my wife, I left the house at a brisk pace. No one held me back. I went out to the parking lot. It was already dark. I leaned tiredly into the driver's seat and turned the ignition key. The engine started instantly, rumbling like a big, well-fed cat. I carefully drove out of the parking lot, slowing down for a moment as if I expected to see a repentant Emily in the rearview mirror. Then I gently pressed the gas and slowly rolled out of the open gate. One thing I was sure of after I kicked him in the balls: the idiot was unlikely to have anything with my wife. Before I pulled over to the highway, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed a familiar number. They picked up the phone almost immediately, as if they were waiting impatiently for my call. "How did it go?" CLE asked, my companion. "A little worse than I thought it would be." I opened the glove compartment and took out a full pack of cigarettes. "I hope you did not go too far," I heard a chuckle on the phone. "No, it's cool," I flicked my lighter. "Need any help?" "I don't know yet. Keep in touch." I hung up. In a minute, my car was racing toward town. I decided to spend a night in the city apartment. It pained me to go back to the place where it all began. There were paintings on all the walls, even in the kitchen. Landscapes, portraits, still lives, and genre scenes. I didn't know the names of the artists. My grandfather was fond of painting, and only he knew which artists had left their mark on his apartment. This apartment smelled like my childhood. I often visited my grandfather and stayed with him overnight. It smelled like cigars and the smoke from a lit fireplace. Here in the old house, I wanted to wait out some time and reflect on what had happened. I lit the fireplace, even though it was early autumn and warm enough, but I wanted at least for a minute to bring back my childhood, to touch the time that had passed, to turn back the withered leaves. I poured myself half a glass of Irish whiskey and sat down in my grandfather's chair, stretching my legs toward the fire. I didn't notice how I dozed off. The doorbell woke me up. It's 3 a.m. Without throwing off the plaid from my shoulders and losing my slippers on the way, I went to the door. I opened it and saw Emily. I looked at her. She was staring at me, tears rolling from her inflamed eyes. She looked awful, no better than I did. "Elton, I knew you were here. In all my life, I had never screwed up so badly. I'm sorry. It won't happen again, never again. I don't want to lose you," she sobbed and put her head down. "We had nothing. I left after Grigor was taken away by ambulance." I shrugged my shoulders. "Well, at least one good news. So, Emily, what did you think would happen when you decided to let that idiot have a night with you? Did you think I wouldn't see it coming? Because of Ava? I was an idiot, a narcissistic fool. Tell me, did you and Grigor Reef set this whole thing up? Did you know beforehand what was going to happen at the party?" She looked down. "Not everything, only in general terms. He suggested that when we got there we might switch, but I thought I would say no and that would be the end of it," she said. "But you didn't say no, you said yes. I thought you were going to stay with Ava. I saw the way she looked at you. It was one night. What about after that? Did you think we would have gone on as before when I would have known that you were messing around with another man, when we both would have known about it? How could I trust you now?" We continued to stand in the entryway. I didn't invite her into the apartment. "I can understand why you thought Ava would come for me that night, but why did you think this creep would be better than me?" She was silent. She had no answers to my questions. "Emily, go away. Just go away. I don't have a wife anymore. You cynically betrayed me. There with your lover. He is not my lover. He is—" I did not let her finish. Closing the door silently, she stood on the landing for a while, and then I heard the clatter of her heels. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of a car pulling away. On Tuesday, an older, imposing man walked into my office. "Mr. Elton Vickers." He waggled his chin imposingly, scrutinizing me through his tinted glasses. "Yes, to whom do I have the honor?" I asked. "D. Brosy Aristar, Mr. Gore's lawyer." The man tilted his head. "Shall I sit down? To what do I owe the honor?" I took out a cigar and defiantly began to cut the tip. "Mr. Grigorie intends to sue you for financial compensation for the injuries you inflicted last Friday evening," he said. I wonder where Grigor found that creep. He should be a doorman in a brothel, not a lawyer. And what's stopping Mr. Grigorie from doing that? I lit a long match and began to smoke my cigar. "Before he puts you behind bars and destroys your business, Mr. Grigorie wants to make you an offer," he said. I was silent, concentrating, blowing rings of smoke. "Mr. Grigorie agrees to forget about the conflict if your wife spends this weekend with him at his estate." The lawyer blushed at such an offer. Even that jerk in a blue suit knew that no normal man would ever go for that. "And why did you come to me? Go to my ex-wife and make arrangements with her. After all, after the last party, it's her problem. It's not like your boss is asking me to spend the night with him." I clamped my cigar in my teeth and stood up, showing that we had nothing more to talk about. The lawyer silently left my office. I looked at myself in the mirror with a cigar in my teeth. Well, just like Schwarzenegger, only a little fat. I sat in silence for a while, then took out my cell phone. One day later, an old car stopped in front of Grigorie's businessman's mansion. 2 guys in orange uniforms walked to the gate. "Gas emergency. There's a big leak in your village. We're checking all the houses," said the guard to the taller one. The guard spoke on the phone for a while, then said, "Go ahead and open the gate." Accompanied by 2 muscle loaders, the gasmen went down to the basement of the gas boiler. One of the repairmen stuck his hand in his pocket and opened a small can. There was a noticeable odor of gas. "There seems to be a leak down here somewhere," said the tall man, setting his case on the floor. "You smell gas?" The gasman started looking at the meter. "And when did you change the pipes?" asked the small one. The guard shrugged his shoulders. "Okay, now we will close the valve and fix the leak. But we still need to change the communications. Tell the landlord it has to be done as quickly as possible." The little one started taking out his tools from his suitcase. The tall one, covering the pipe with his back, wrapped a small amount of special ignition cord around it and put a 3-hour pencil cap in it. Then he conscientiously wrapped the whole thing with tar tape. The little one rummaged around underneath, stealthily opening the valve. "Well, that's it. If anything, he didn't specify what. Call the alarm. The guys picked up the tool and briskly went to the exit. The guard closed the doors to the basement tightly. 3 hours later, there was an explosion from a gas leak in the basement that caused a fire. By the time rescuers arrived, the house had almost completely burned down. Fortunately, no one was killed. Several guards and the cook received minor burns. Mr. Grigorie had no time for erotic pleasures then. His warehouse of finished products caught fire. In addition to construction, Mr. Grigorie was also engaged in the manufacture of exclusive furniture by special order. Everything burnt, which was prepared for shipment to customers. The investigation concluded that the old wiring shorted out. To improve his nerves, businessman Grigorie urgently went abroad to Thailand for an erotic massage. But at the Bangkok airport, pills were found in his luggage. He was immediately taken to the detention center. He is now awaiting trial. How this will turn out for him remains to be seen. I live alone in my apartment. Emily won't give up trying to make peace with me, but I can't forgive her. I still have her words in my ears. Get out! You disgust me. Oh, and one more thing. I transferred some money to the account of the Wild Geese Special Forces Veterans Club, of which I have been a regular member for almost 10 years. But nobody knows about it. And you don't tell anyone. What do you think of our story today? I thought it was quite exciting. I like the interesting plot twists in the story. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next videos. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident, especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it." Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. "Do you two know each other?" "Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, 'I'm moving to the sales department soon.' If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.